We ain't no stranger to panic and failure, let me tell you what. We've fought different kinds of beasts with different sort of weaponry from different time periods. We've been all alone, we've been scared, we've been frightened, but today we're going even further back to a land much more distant, to a universe far more unforgiving, and that is the universe of Ark Survival Evolved. A game about punching trees, drinking seawater, and most of all dookie-ing. But sometimes it's a game about so much more. It's a game about camaraderie. It's a game about loss. It's a game about sheer willpower of your freaking mind, because you better hope it doesn't drive you insane. Indeed, this is what our next adventure entails. Now, everything I just told you, you'd think I'd know a decent amount about. After all, I have 340 hours in this game, so, you know, I'm not really an amateur. Totally. But we know how this usually goes for me. These 340 hours, all the surviving I've been doing is built off the backs of others. It's built off the support of the modding community. But we're not doing that today. Today we're taking Ark for what it is. Pure, straight Ark Survival Evolved. No modifications, no nothing. It's just the real experience. And why are we doing it? This video is a prequel. This is all to prepare, to get ready, to train for what's coming up in the next video, which is going to be the first time in 340 hours of playing this game that I decide to join a PvP server. I have no idea what it entails, but if we know the way that I am, it's going to be terrifying. Let me show you what we're working with. This pure survival prowess that we're going to use to make it to the top of an Ark PvP server next week. So for this round of single player Ark, we're going to be playing on Crystal Isles because I love that map, and you don't get to debate with me on why I love that map. I just love that map, and thus I'm gonna play it because I'm the one making this video. Anyway, when it comes to the sliders, I was a little bit overwhelmed looking at them, and I've never dealt with these settings before. So instead of Googling it like a sane individual, I just decided, you know what, let's put all these sliders all the way up. I'm sure some of it is good, some of it is bad. I'm sure it's gonna equalize out. My primary strategy for the character creation was one thing and one thing alone. We were going into enemy territory. This isn't my land. This is the land of the dinos. And thus, what do you do when you have to understand your enemy? You become more like them. And thus I decided, if I'm gonna fight dinos, I'm gonna be a dino. I'm gonna look like a dino. I'm gonna think like a dino. I'm gonna confuse them until there's nothing left. They won't even know what they're dealing with. And on top of that, if I'm a really big dino, they're gonna be afraid of me. They're gonna fear me. And thus I loaded into a random starting location because there weren't any helpful brackets that said, oh, this is the beginner area, so I didn't know what to go for. And I clearly found out that my strategy, it was already failing. Ain't no dino was intimidated by me, not even the little one. And clearly, if I was thinking like a dino, it was the worst dino to ever live, so it wasn't going well. But it would be one thing if the dinos were my only problem, because the biggest enemy, as always, is myself. I am my own biggest enemy. Because you see, I just couldn't stop picking up every single tiny thing that I saw. My grubby little hands wanted my pockets to be filled to the brim with a bunch of useless stuff. Sometimes I was so way down it even got me killed. I had no choice but to look a dino in the eye as I couldn't move. I couldn't even follow the basic principles of survival. It turns out that sustaining a diet of berries, it just doesn't work. I could immediately tell that the settings that I picked were a little bit wonky. Every single time I'd slow-mo run, I would just be dookie-ing constantly, you know? It was too much dookie-ing. And not only that, I had to drink so much seawater that day, eat so many berries to sustain myself. It was like, just no matter what I was doing, I was stuffing my mouth, I was slowing down, I was emptying my pockets, you know? It was all just maintaining all the time. Even just punching a tree even once, you know, it just wields so much. I didn't have to grind too hard, and I didn't mind that. Maybe it did equalize. I was clearly not able to settle down and survive, and maybe it would have been a good indication that this wasn't a good starting location. It took me a little bit to catch up. So I decided to Google it. I finally succumbed to Google, even though I didn't want to, and they told me that Southwest is the best starting location, and so I spawned there. So immediately upon spawning into this starter location, I see a wyvern in the sky, which wasn't a good indication, but I already came came this far, I wasn't gonna stop, you know? I still ran into the same problems for a little bit, but eventually the spawn RNG really came in my favor, and I spawned nearby this mountain that obscured me in this safe little island. And I thought, okay, this is perfect. We have a chance now. But there was still a problem. I was still starving to death. And thus, I reached a breakthrough in my grand survival plan. The key to surviving in Ark survival. You want to know what it is? It's a spear, and it's killing a dodo with that spear. Once you kill that dodo with that freaking spear, you're set. Your run is, that's it. You got your run established. Which means that you shouldn't be afraid of every single dino that you see, because you know what? Killing them is going to help your survival. It may stop their survival, but it's going to help your survival. Basically, kill! You must murder! You must destroy! That's the moral of the story. So with that piece of meat, my stomach was finally satiated, and I was set up. So now it was time for the actual logistics. And so I began building my base. And soon the problem of encumberment was becoming too much to handle. I could hardly move. I was just running in slow-mo, just 24/7, and it was exhausting. But I came up with a tactic, you know? I built one little foundation, which was super hard, by the way, with the way I was doing things. And then I built a little storage box on that one little foundation, and I put everything in my pockets in there. And I'd go out and I'd get one stockpile of each resource at a time and bring it back to my big storage box. This worked out, and I was able to make progress on my house, but ridiculously slowly. And it was only about to the point where I had the entire house built and half of the ceiling completed when I realized that, what the heck am I doing? If I just found a few pieces of metal and built the metal pick and the metal axe, I would have such an easier time. And so I had a new quest at hand. It was time to seek out metal. And once again, I had to look on Google for it, but I found these coordinates and I was gonna go there. It's pretty cool that you need a compass to get to the metal, but you need metal to build the compass. You know what I'm saying? Like, whoever designed that, you're a meanie and I don't like you, okay? Cool. This wasn't very easy to do with a lack of a compass, but I'm sure most people with good gamer knowledge would be able to find their way very easily. Me, given my vast history of directional impairment that, if you're a fan of me, you've heard of, I ran around the island multiple times, followed the shore, took different strategies to try to find my way to where I was going. But the problem was, you know, I just couldn't find it. I was too confused. I hardly could figure out which island I was on somehow. Eventually, I decided, you know what? Let's just keep walking in one direction. So I pointed the little cursor thing on my map towards where I thought the node was, and I just kept walking. And eventually, I found it. I got a little bit of metal, but I couldn't carry too much, obviously. And I found my way back home by following the shoreline. I finally got my metal pick and my metal axe. I made it. You know, my base was basically established. I would consider that pretty good. I was proud of myself. It was the first base I had ever single-handedly established in Ark, and it was looking pretty cute. It was around this point that I ran into my first aggressive encounter, and it wasn't with a big old dino, and I thought, hey, maybe, you know, I can take it on before it notices me. And it had been a while since I played this game, so I kind of forgot how to use my spear momentarily in the heat of the moment and during the panic. So I ended up throwing my spear at it and then didn't know how to pick it back up, so I just kind of ran circles around this Dilophosaur until finally I picked my spear back up and vanquished it. That'll teach it to pick on me. It could have gone a lot smoother, but I was not afraid to attack. I felt accomplished. I was good. I had a whole lot of meat. With my base established, it was time to get some friends, you know? I needed my dino friends. Most of all, I needed a flyer, because if I was to get more metal, I didn't want to go through the same trauma that I've been through before. So I had my little bolas, and I had these trank arrows, and I was ready. I walked along the shoreline so that I wouldn't get lost, and eventually I found a pteranodon. Wasn't really the prettiest pteranodon, but he was special to me, and that's what matters. I tranked him, and I couldn't figure out what he ate for a little bit, so I just put every single type of food in his inventory, and what do you know? Boy's a carnivore. Or she? I don't know. I finally tamed my first dino, and I affectionately named him Friend, and I felt on top of the world. I just felt so much courage, and I felt like I could do anything. And thus, I had my eye out on that little Triceratops to the right, and I was like, you know what? If I took this pteranodon in just one shot, I can probably take that trike in a few more. right? And so I confronted it, and thus it vanquished me. I got a little bit too ambitious, and here's what you have to learn about that. As soon as I went back to where I died to get my backpack, I found the corpse of Friend right there, laying on the ground, helpless. His owner abandoned him because she wasn't strong enough, because she got too greedy, and Friend died knowing that he was not enough for me. With this huge friend-shaped void in my heart that I had yet to fill, I decided, Mr. Trike, you will not get the best of me. I will have you one way or another. And so this time, I learned yet another ultra-valuable lesson in survival. When trying to make very, very big friends, one must strategize. One must think outside of the box. One cannot simply claim a big friend and have it accepted into their herd. No, no, no. So I decided to climb a mountain so it couldn't get me, that stupid little charger. You know what I'm saying? It couldn't charge at me no more if I was on this little mountain. So it couldn't do anything as I wailed on it with my arrows, and eventually, you know what? I got it. Big Friend was mine. Once I had Big Friend, I brought him back to my house, and I decided to walk the other way so that I could finally acquire my Pteranodon. This time it was a little bit harder finding one, to be honest with you. Even when I did find one, they kind of just flew away and I lost sight of them. You know, they would disappear into the atmosphere or something, hell if I know. But eventually, I didn't just find one Pteranodon, I found a pair. One was a pretty high level as well, so that was pretty good. And I discovered one was male and one was female. So I named one husband and I named one wife because I want them to be happy together forever and ever and ever. And in the future, maybe they can make a cute little Pteranodon family. Better from me, right? I'll have a whole army. You see how I'm strategizing? I'm gonna be ready to take on the whole island in no time. Just you wait. And then eventually, I decided, you know what? Let's complete the herd while we're at it. And I found this little guy. I decided to spare his life. I was becoming merciful. I was becoming one with the dinos. Now that I was a dino parent, I just couldn't bear to kill too much more. And thus, little Friend became my own. With my entire family complete, it was time to finally take to the skies and get the metal that I needed for a complete suit of armor. It took me some circling around, but I finally found that exact same node I was at before. Now this is when I found a large hole in my strategy. I accidentally farmed too much metal, and I was way too heavy to be able to be flown by husband. And I was somewhat stranded. I was too encumbered, I was thirsty, I didn't know what to do. And so I decided, okay, we just gotta leave the metal on the floor and we just have to run, okay? I had to leave my Pteranodon behind, I just had to find my way. My first move obviously was to get some water so to make it to the shoreline. So I walked out of where this iron node was, and lo and behold, was my base. Exactly right next to the metal node that I kept revisiting by circling around the island over and over and over again. Meaning that my entire endeavor was completely useless, and my entire journey was completely unnecessary, and somehow I overcomplicated it into oblivion. But you know what matters is that I got it done. So at the end of my journey, with my complete herd, my full suit of armor, and somewhat decent living quarters, I realized that it was a long way to go before I was a pro survivor, but that I would not stop challenging myself and pushing my limits until I could survive even in the worst circumstances. The moral of the story is, I don't know how ready I am for PvP. I don't even know how ready I am to take on a boss. All I do know is that what matters is that I am here. And it's all about the friends I made along the way and the friends that I lost. That's it. Yep.